Hey guys, hope everybody's doing all right. So we're going to continue on with graphing sine and cosine. So the ones that we did before were where we just had an amplitude and a period change. Now we're actually going to talk about when you have a vertical or a horizontal shift. So it's just adding another element to the, to the graph. So for number 7, it says sketch the graph of 1/2 sine of 2x minus 1. Okay, so this minus 1 here, okay, is going to move my entire graph down 1. Okay, so what that means also is that your principal axis is also going to change. So instead of, whenever you do your axis points, it's going to go to, the x-axis. Now it's going to actually go to y equals 1 because of the shift down 1. So this changes the principal axis to y equals -1. Okay. So I see that my amplitude is 1/2. My b term is 2. Which makes my period pi. And then my interval is going to be pi over 4. Okay. And then the value for d here, or your vertical shift, is -1. Okay. So when you draw your graph now, you draw your axis. So I would draw your original, your original x and y axis, and then we'll do. So we have to start at 0, and we're gonna go up by pi over 4. So pi over 4, 2 pi over 4 is pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4. All right, and then you got 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4, 7, and then 8. And then I'm just going to go one period to the left. Okay, so now with my vertical shift down 1, okay, it might be a good idea to redraw the axis at -1. Okay, so what you would do is just put a dotted line right there at -1, like that. Okay, just so that, okay, this is like the new y-axis that you have. Okay, and then you're going to do the points the same way that you would do before. All right, so since it's sine, we're going to do Sahala. All right, so now instead of starting at 0, I'm actually going to start at -1. So that's my first axis value. Okay, so now I'm going to go up by 1/2. And then down back to my axis, my low point, back to my axis. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing in the other direction as well. All right, and then all you guys need to do is to connect the points. Okay, so now because of the shift down 1, right, our range now has changed. Now it's going from -3/2 to -1/2. Okay, So again, just a suggestion, it might be a good idea to redraw that principal axis with a dotted line. Okay, so moving on to number 8. So I have my amplitude is 3, but I also have a reflection. And then my B term is 1/2, which then makes my period 4 pi, and then my interval is 1 pi. Okay, and then my axis here is going to be at 2. Okay, so if my new axis is at y equals 2, that means I'm going to go up to positive 5, and I'm actually going to go down to negative 1. Okay, so that should adjust your graph a little bit. Okay, so I have to go up by pi. All right, so I got pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then 1 in the other direction. Okay, so I'm going to redraw my principal axis, right? Because it's a shift up 2, it's going to go to y equals 2. Okay. All right, now when I do my points, right, because it's cosine, this is what I'm starting with, and then because of the reflection, right, your high and your low points are going to switch. So it's going to go, you're going to start your low point, and then your axis, high point, axis, low point, okay? So because my new axis is at y equals 2, right, and my amplitude is 3, my low point is going to be 3 units lower than positive 2. So that's going to go to negative 1. So that's my low point. So pi would be my axis. 2 pi is going to be 3 higher, which will put me at 5. 3 pi axis, 4 pi low. 5 pi axis, 6 pi high, 7 pi axis, 8 pi low. All right, so then just connect your points now. All right, and then that would be your graph. All right, so now because of the shift, right, your range is going to go from negative 1 all the way up to positive 5. Okay, so just something to be aware of. Okay, now for number 9, instead of the shift being up or down, right, number 9 you have a shift on the inside. Okay, so this is going to move this. This is going to be right pi over 2. Okay, so instead of changing the x-axis, now we're going to be changing the y-axis. All right, so your amplitude is still 3. Your b term here is 1. So then your period is 2 pi. And then your interval is 2 pi over 4 or pi over 2. Now your c term here is pi over 2. okay? And then that's going to move it to the right. Okay, so draw your axis again. All right, so you're going to go up by pi over 2. So 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2 would be pi, 3 pi over 2, 4 pi over 2, 5 pi over 2, 6 pi over 2, 7 pi over 2, and then 8 pi over 2. Okay, so because of the shift that's going to be happening to the right pi over 2, I'm going to put a dotted line here at pi over 2, because that's going to tell me, okay, instead of starting at x equals 0, it's probably going to make more sense to start at x equals pi over 2. So when I do my curve now, all right, my first axis point is going to be at pi over 2 instead of being at 0. Okay, so then it's axis, high, axis, low, axis. All right, and then you got high, axis, low, and then if I just draw that out, that would be 9 pi over 2. That would be your last point. Okay, so that's 2 periods, and then if I work my way from the left, right, I'm going to go, now a big thing that I see a lot of kids make is that like they'll go from pi over 2 to negative pi over 2. Okay, don't skip over 0. Okay, you're going up by pi over 2 each time, so don't skip that value at pi over 2. So that needs to be a low point, axis, high, axis. All right, so that's just like kind of like working backwards. And then obviously negative 2 pi would just be low. Okay, and then you connect your curve like that. Okay. All right, so for number 10, okay, so we have a little bit of work to do ahead of time. So we want to put it in standard form, right? So I'm going to take out the 4. So that's going to leave me with x plus, now pi divided by 4 is pi over 4. Okay, so I have an amplitude of 1/2 with a reflection, and then my b term is 4, which then makes my period pi over 2, and then my interval, oops, sorry, getting ahead of myself, is pi over 8. Okay, and then we're going to go left pi over 4, right? Because the c term here is negative, so that's going to be left pi over 4. Okay. Okay, so since I'm going left pi over 4, and I have to go up by pi over 8, right? So if we started at 0, right? Negative pi over 8, and then negative 2 pi over 8 would be negative pi over 4. Okay, so that's actually where I'm going to start. So I'm going to put my axis value there at negative pi over 4. Okay, so I got negative 2 pi over 4, negative 2 pi over 8, or negative pi over 4, negative pi over 8, then 0, and then pi over 8, and then 2 pi over 4, 2 pi over 8, which is pi over 4. Now, if you look at the distance from negative pi over 4 to pi over 4, right, that's actually pi over 2. Okay, so that's one period. Okay. So I just need to do one more to the right and then one more to the left. So 3 pi over 8, 4 pi over 8, 5 pi over 8, and then 6 pi over 8. All right, and then you're going to go in the other direction as well. So negative 3 pi over 8, 4 pi over 8, 5 pi over 8, and 6 pi over 8. Okay, so we got cosine, and then because of the reflection, we're going to start at the low point instead of the high point, okay? So we're going to go low, axis, high. Okay, again, don't skip over x equals 0. Axis, low. And then axis, high, axis, low. And then just connect. All right, so again, all the points are relative to what your shifts are going to be, okay? Excuse me. Okay, so what I'm going to do now for number 11, number 11 has two shifts. It's got a vertical and a horizontal. So this is kind of putting everything together now. So I have f of x equals 2 sine of 1/2 times x plus, now if I do pi over 2 divided by 1/2, right? That's really pi over 2 times 2 over 1, or just pi. Okay, so this will be x plus pi, and then minus 2. All right, so my amplitude will be 2. B term is 1/2, which then makes your period 4 pi, and then your interval 1 pi. Your C term is negative pi, so this is going to be going left, and then your D term is negative 2, so that's down. All right, so this one has two shifts to it. Okay, so if I start, I'm going to go left pi. Okay, and I have to go up by pi each time because that's my interval. So if I start here at negative pi, okay, then I'm going to go up by pi each time. So 0, and then pi, 2 pi, 3 pi. Okay, that's one interval, right? Because my period is 4 pi. And then 5, oh, I skipped over one, sorry. So 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so that's another period, and then -2, -3, -4, -5. Okay, so that's another period to the left. Okay, now we're going to go down 2, right? And our amplitude is 2. Okay, so that tells me that if I'm going to be going down 2 and I have to go, my amplitude would be 2. I'm going all the way up to 0 and then down to -4. Okay. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw my new principal axis, which is at -2. And then I'm going to draw my new y-axis, which will start at -pi, just to give you guys an idea of where the points should be starting. Okay, so we have sine, so we're going to start at the axis here. Okay, so where those two intersect, right, that's where that's your first point, right? That's your axis point. And then you're going to go up 2, so axis high, axis low, axis. Okay, so that's one period right there. And then high, axis, low, axis. Okay, and then do the same thing in the other direction. So axis, high, axis, low. And then just connect. All right, so that would be three cycles for that graph. Okay. So again, just take your time, figure out all the information that you need ahead of time, amplitude, period, do you have any shifts? I recommend that you do the dotted lines just to figure out where the new axis goes, and then just take it from there. So if you guys have any questions, let me know. Thanks.